Chapter 8, Lesson 4, Solve Addition and Subtraction Equations. Our learning objective is you will use the properties of equality and inverse operations to solve addition and subtraction equations. Okay, so looking at our essential question, how do you solve addition and the subtraction equations? To solve an equation, you must get the variable on one side of the equation by itself. Okay, so you need to move everything over to where you get one variable on the side by itself. You have solved equations by using models. You can solve equations by using properties of equality. Unlock the problem. The longest distance jumped on a pogo stick is 23 miles. Emilio has jumped 5 miles on a pogo stick. The equation d plus 5 equals 23 can be used to find the remaining distance, d, in miles he must jump to match the record. Solve the equation. Explain what the solution means. Okay, so if we're looking at this, to get d by itself, you must undo the addition by 5. Okay, so what that's saying is we don't want that over there anymore because we need to get d by itself. So if you subtract, so we're going to look at it as two sides. So we're going to look at this side, and then we have this side of the equation. Oh, I didn't change colors. This side of the equation, okay? So use the subtraction property of equality. So we're just going to subtract both sides by 5. So we're going to take d plus 5 minus 5 equals 23 minus 5. As long as we make the same change to both sides, we can do that. So now we have d plus 0 equals 23 minus 5 is 18. So now we have d equals 18 because the identity property of addition says a number plus 0 will always equal that number. So d plus 0 is the same thing as d equals 18. Now we're going to check the solution. Write an equation. So we're going to do d plus 5 equals 23. And we're going to substitute 18 for d. We're checking to see if that works, what we found up here. So we're going to take 18 plus 5, which should equal 23, and it does. 23 equals 23. So the solution means that Emilio must jump 18 more miles in order to break that record. When you solve an equation that involves subtraction, you can use addition to get the variable by itself on one side of the equal sign. So the addition property of equality is saying if we have 7 minus 4 equals 3, if we take both of them plus 4, 7 minus 4 plus 4, which would cancel out the 4's, and the same thing on the other side, 3 plus 4, then we would get 7 equals 7. Don't overthink it, guys. Just make sure you understand if you do it to one side, you got to do it to the other side. And the only reason that we would do that is to get the variable by itself. So looking at this example. While cooking dinner, Carla pours 5/8 cup of milk from a carton. This leaves 7/8 cups of milk in the carton. Write and solve an equation to find how much milk was in the carton when Carla started cooking. So step 1 is to write an equation. Let A represent the amount of milk in cups in the carton when Carla started. We don't know that, okay? We started with A amount. She poured out, which means to subtract 5/8 of the cup. And that's going to equal the amount in the carton at the end, which it says this leaves 7/8. Okay? So that's step 1 is to write that equation. Step 2 is to solve the equation. So think, 5/8 is subtracted from A, so add 5/8 to both sides to undo the subtraction. So if we take minus 5/8 plus 5/8 plus 5/8, we're essentially just getting rid of this. This doesn't exist anymore. So now we have A equals whatever 7/8 plus 5/8 is, which 7 plus 5. Remember, we have to have the denominators the same. They're both 8, so we take 7 plus 5, which is 12. And we leave the denominator, which is 8. So we have 12/8. Okay, to simplify that, how many times does 8 go into 12? It goes in there 1 time. which is 4 out of the 8 left. And then that can simplify down to 1 1/2, because if we divide both those by 2. So A equals 1 1/2. You need to go back through and check. Does that work? Well, let's see. 1 1/2, we already know in improper form would be 12/8 minus 5/8 equals 7/8. Does that work? 12 minus 5 is 7. And then we leave the denominator, so it does. So there were 1 1/2 cups of milk in the carton when Carla started cooking. That would be correct. Solve the equation n plus 35 equals 80. We are on share and show now. Okay, number 1 on share and show. So n plus 35 equals 80. Next step they did was n plus 35 minus 35 equals 80 minus, and that should be 35, because we're going to use the subtraction property of equality. So if we have 80 minus 35, 7, 5, 45. N should equal 45. Solve the equation and check the solution. I have 16 plus x equals 42. I want x to be alone, so I'm going to subtract 16. Subtract 16 gets rid of that, so I have x equals 42 minus 16, 3, 12, 6, 2, 26. X equals 26. Number 3, y plus 6 2/10 equals 9 1/10. I want the y by itself, so I'm going to subtract to get rid of that. So y equals 9 1/10 minus 6 2/10. 8, 11, 9, 8 minus 10 is 2 decimal. 2 9/10. Number 4, m plus 3/10 equals 7/10. So I'm going to subtract 3/10, gets rid of that. Minus 3/10 equals 7 minus 3 is 4. 4/10, leave the denominator the same. Or you could simplify, which I would suggest. Divide the numerator by 2, which is 2. Denominator divided by 2 is 5. So m equals to this. Again, all we are doing is adding or subtracting. So if the problem has a subtraction sign, you probably want to add that number to get rid of it. So z minus 1/3 equals 1 2/3. So I'm going to add 1/3 to get rid of that. Plus 1/3. 2/3 plus 1/3 is 3/3, which is 1 whole. So 2 2/3 plus 1/3 is just going to equal 2 wholes. So z equals 2. And we're going to do one more together, and then you're going to try number 7 alone. So 12 equals x minus 24. So add 24. So we have x equals 36. Try number 7 on your own and show your teacher before you get started on the rest on your own. So you have 25 3/10 equals w minus 14 9/10. So I'm going to give you a hint. You need to be adding something to get rid of it. Get your variable by itself.